A UK judge has sent the case of Julian Assange to Britain's Home Secretary Priti Patel, who will now decide whether or not to extradite the Wikileaks founder to the US. The ruling brings the long-running legal saga closer to a conclusion. Julian Assange can appeal within 14 days of any final decision, but his lawyers have until the 18th of May to make representations to the Minister and could potentially launch further appeals on other points in the case. For more analysis, joining us live is Greg Barns. He's an advisor to the Assange Australian Campaign. Greg, appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Was that outcome expected by the Assange camp overnight?
It was expected, Ash, because what happened after the UK Supreme Court said it wouldn't take the appeal that had been lodged by the legal team in the UK, it went back to the Magistrates Court for the purposes of referring the extradition request now onto the Home Secretary's desk. So it wasn't a surprise.
And do we have any sense of which way the British Minister is leaning when it comes to this? Has he made comments about this?
Well, we don't. And what's important is that this matter is now back in the political realm. So previously, the Australian government has said, look, we can't intervene because the matter is before the courts. It's no longer before the courts in that sense. This is a political decision that will be made by Priti Patel. And it's a decision which the Australian government, and of course, in this context, the opposition could influence. And for the same reasons that we've discussed on your program previously, this is an Australian citizen facing an effective death penalty for revealing the truth about war crimes in the United States. It's a very dangerous precedent, this case, for journalists, and that's a point that's been made clear by media organisations across the world, including in Australia.
Yeah, as you say, the death penalty is something that is certainly on the table in the US, but there would be a number of steps, wouldn't there, that Julian Assange would face if he did get extradited to the US. What are those steps? What would be the future for Julian Assange if he was sent to America?
Well, if he's sent to the United States, there have been assurances given by the US lawyers, which led to the Court of Appeal overturning the original decision not to extradite, to say he wouldn't be placed in a supermax prison. But many people have said that these assurances aren't worth the paper they're written on, because once he's back in the United States, of course, the UK and the UK courts have no leverage. The history of the way in which these cases have been dealt with in the United States is that prison conditions are oppressive, and you've got a person who's got and had declining mental and physical health, which has been well documented, and feared risk to his health was one of the major reasons why the UK courts originally said no to extradition. I mean, the other point to make is that, of course, the UK doesn't automatically hand over people. When Theresa May was Home Secretary some years ago, she stopped an extradition of a person on the basis of their mental health wouldn't be cared for in the United States. So there is precedent. It's not unprecedented, but it does require some pressure coming on to the UK government to make sure it does the right thing.
Greg, has the US approach to this case shifted at all with the shift from Donald Trump to Joe Biden as president? Is there a difference along partisan lines in the United States?
Well, not really, Ash. I mean, as you might recall in our previous discussions, there were originally a small number of charges. The indictment was loaded up with a bunch of Espionage Act charges. First time the Espionage Act has been used for a journalist outside the United States. That hasn't changed under Joe Biden. And I know that there have been some approaches made by the Australian government. I think Marise Payne raised the matter with Joe Biden's Foreign Secretary, Secretary of State, I should say, and I know that Julie Bishop did it previously with Mike Pompeo. But there's been no change in position. I mean, if there were to be a change in position, it would require the Australian government to use the considerable political capital it has got with the United States to say, this is one of our citizens, we want this case to end, and we want it to end quickly.
And is there any difference here at home? Obviously, we're in a federal election campaign between how a Labor government might handle this issue over a coalition government.
Well, certainly in recent times, and I think Anthony Albanese said recently he wanted this case had gone on far too long, I think was his phrase, and that it needed resolution. Now, that's a shift in position. There are people in the ALP who are very supportive of Assange, and they belong to Andrew Wilkie's crossbench group. And I think another interesting issue now is the attitude of potential crossbenchers if there were a hung parliament. Adam Bandt, for example, is very supportive of Assange, as are the Greens generally. Andrew Wilkie and other key MPs, including Bridget Archer, the Liberal in Bass, So that also is an interesting factor as to where pressure is going to come on whoever gets elected in May to bring this Australian home.
Greg, just finally, you mentioned the health concerns that we have heard about for years now surrounding Julian Assange. How is he now? Do you know? Do you have any insight into how he's doing? I mean, as you say, this has been just going on for so many years now.
Yeah, look, I haven't spoken to him, but I speak to his father regularly, and I think we saw recently on 60 Minutes the wedding, and we didn't see him, but we saw Stella, his partner, and the two young children. And of course, it's extremely difficult on the health of everyone who's involved in this case. And that's the thing about this case. There is an enormous human cost. And for what? For a person who exposed US war crimes. And that's why a lot of people, I think, take the view that, look, whatever might have happened in the past, this case has just gone on too long and needs to be brought to a head.
Greg Barns, appreciate your insights. Thanks as always for joining us on Newsday.
Thanks, Ash.